There's a strong one.
Boards, games, it's what we're talking about actually. Boards, games. I'm not gonna shout, although I can only speak for me. I am starting off this morning with a little bit of streaming, and over around here you will see three people who are all quite well.
Oh no, we're all something.
And
something.
Alan, it is Alan Paull. We are going to have a conversation with us all. We are going to talk about prototyping, the thing you do between inventing the game and the first time you're playtesting it. And this is a terrible song that I'm singing. I'm sorry, but anyway, boards games, it's what I'm talking about. Boards games and prototyping. I'm not gone. Hello, and good morning.
Totally scripted. Scripted. Yep. Morning.
It's lovely to see you as always. Yeah, my internet seems to be problematic. I really need to get onto the phone with BT. I'm very disappointed with this new service. We definitely paid for like the top service that they can provide, so this is not great. But excited to offer some descriptions if I can't think of any, but might not take you up on that offer. I am Bez. We have some beats. We've got some blethering going on. We are going to be discussing prototyping with three wonderful people.
I'm Rita.
only Rita, I think. Yeah, just Rita.
So, could you introduce yourself? Rita, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rita Modl.
Yes.
I'm also a board game designer. I live near Munich. And I also love playing board games. And I also love talking about board games. And, of course, talk about prototyping.
And Matthew.
Yeah, hi, I'm Matthew Dunstan, also board game designer, living in Prague at the moment, and also like playing games, and I'm also a research scientist in my day life. So,
good morning, everybody. I'm Alan Paull. I'm also a game designer. I'm retired, which is nice. And
officially retired, Alan, right?
Officially now retired. Yeah, I have just announced that my old information management
from your other job.
From my other job, yeah, it's actually officially closed. So hooray. Well, to be fair, I did run my own business for more than 20 years, so I feel that's some form of achievement. But anyway, I suppose I am now more or less a full-time board game designer, which is quite good for being retired.
And yeah, congratulations on making it this far. And hello, Elaine. It is lovely to have you this morning. And let's talk a wee bit. So for everyone watching probably already knows, I'm Bez. I also love board games and dancing and all sorts. But let's talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights. So I'm actually going to share a couple of pictures from Twitter that I'll get set up. So would you mind going first, Rita?
Yes, so I told 3 weeks ago I played Terra Mystica for the first time. And so last week I played Gaia Project for the first time. So, and I have to say that I like Gaia Project more than Terra Mystica because of the theme. I think the theme fits more to the mechanic than Terra Mystica. So I think I will play Gaia Project one more time. So we played it with 4 person, and we played, I think, 3 hours. So or longer, I don't know. So this is not a game which I will play every week, but I think so one more time I will enjoy.
I guess I'm up. No, I mean, I really like Terra Mystica too, but I haven't played Gaia Project, so it sounds like I should check it out. For me, I'm trying to think what my recent highlight is. Well, I mean, I've been playing a lot of Luck Be a Landlord, as if Bez came by the stream yesterday, which is a new roguelike slot machine game, which is a lot cuter than it sounds. And for board gamers, it's essentially a bag building game, actually, a digital bag building game of sorts. But it's a lot of fun and very, very addictive. So I've sunk about 30 hours into it over the last week and a half or something. So yeah, yes, I am a bit addicted, as I'd said.
Can I have 3 recent highlights? Is that allowed?
Oops.
Just greedy.
I am greedy.
Quickly chat, just say hello to the codes.
Hello.
To in the comments, who thank you very much, and hello to Alex. It's lovely to see you all.
Yay. We actually received a physical copy of Chakra this week. So we played 2-player. Charlie and I played 2-player Chakra with the physical pieces. I think is about the first time we've played it physically. It's really good, yeah. But when we've played Chakra online quite a lot, but it's very nice to get a physical copy. It's actually a French copy because you can't get English copies at the moment, but French is fine. And it's only the rules that are in the specific language. So that's great. Went on a lot of snowy walks each time we've been the last couple of days. It's been nice and snowy, which has been great. I love that. And final highlight, the other day, I helped to run an online freeform called the Highgate Club, which I and some colleagues wrote in 2010. We played it online. It's a 14-player game, so we had 14 players and 2 umpires for an evening. And in the circumstances, it went pretty well. We had one player who had to drop because of technical issues with Discord, but it was only one, so it could have been worse. And most people enjoyed it a lot. So the tech otherwise generally worked. We were even running a bot on Discord, and that pretty much worked as stated in the blurb for it. So that was good.
Nice.
And everybody had a good time, and that's the key thing. Not the same as face-to-face, and obviously everybody would much prefer to play face-to-face, but at least we were able to get together and have some role-playing and have a really good fun evening.
Well, that does sound lovely. And yeah, I think you're right, that the most important thing is for everybody to have those good times. It doesn't really matter so much what exactly is going on with the game itself. If I can share my screen, there we go. I played a wee bit of, oh, sorry, Matt. Matt's hidden behind the banner. Let me get rid of
Don't
that.
worry, it's fine.
So we can...
I'm not that important.
Hey, you are every bit as important as everyone else. And also a quick hello to Timmy. It's lovely to see you pop in. And so, yeah, my Sitsi. Interestingly, so my family, I'm not going to get into this too much, very much non-gamers. These are people who for the past year might have played 2 games, Rummy and Backgammon, but a fair bit. And yeah, after 5 games, we finally managed to finish the second game, if you know what I mean, because they wanted to practice. And I think there's something about that, sort of taking it at your own pace, if you know what I mean. But of course, the problem with that is that then you lose the catch-up mechanism, which Knizia has got in here, which is so obvious. And it feels, oh, yeah, of course,
Well, we have some techie problems there from Bez, who is trying to show us pictures at the same time as talking. But as we know, it's difficult to talk and show pictures at the same time.
Maybe this could be a new game where you have to guess what Bez would be talking about right now.
Yeah, maybe we could have a script for Bez in the comments. That would be good.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, we can hear you again, Bez.
That's got to be one for Ksate. We need a commentary from Ksate.
Oh, man, I got new internet. We got new internet. Yeah.
We'll cover up for you, Bez. You just have to.
Sorry about that, but hello, Maya. It's lovely to see you. And let's
mime. We'll just mime and we'll put words in for you. All right.
No, that's okay. We've talked about what I wanted to talk about. My city is good fun. Walking around is good fun, and I've got to do a wee bit of exercise. So let's now talk about a brilliant thing. Brilliant thing was a little thing which is brilliant. And I don't normally do this, but it's becoming a thing. But let's make this a new thing where we just talk about the main topic of prototyping and why prototyping is brilliant. So yeah, Rita, why is prototyping a brilliant thing?
Because it's a pleasure to design new games, and when you start a new game, and you're cutting things out or making some illustrations or something like that, and you're testing it, and for the first time, and you see, oh, this could be something, and then you want to go farther, and the only thing you want to do is work on this prototype, and this is so cool. So this is something you really want to do, so you're enjoying your work. What are you laughing?
No, just I'm enjoying the enthusiasm. I'm really enjoying it.
Is it me? Oh, sorry. I'm interrupting. No. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Prototypes. Well, I've got a few behind me. We've got prototype Kingmaker board. We've got a. Now, can I do this reflected in the screen? No, can't. Can I? That's a game called Echolocations, which is you can't see it at all. That is a very historic game which you can't see at all, which is a game designed by somebody called Bez, but you won't have heard of that person. And over here is some Kingmaker bits, which you can't see. And down the bottom here is a game by Dave Neal for 2 to 4 year olds. I like prototypes. Yeah, I like prototyping. It's great fun. That was it.
Should I offer a dissenting? I feel like I should offer a dissenting opinion. You know, like I despise prototyping.
No,
I prefer not to do
like,
it.
No, we can talk about why prototyping is bad later on. Now it's the brilliant thing type. Look at the banner, Matt.
Oh, okay.
Look at
look,
banner.
Yeah,
brilliant thing.
Positivity, Matt. Yeah, positivity, Matt. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know, I just feel like, you know, it's you know, what is it, fair and balanced coverage or something, you know? No.
No, we can get into the downsides later on.
Yeah, well, prototype. Well, I mean, it's great to play. I think it's nice to play a game that's been in your head and it works out, and that can't happen without a prototype. So for me, you know, it's yes, I am a bit of a rebel, but I have to admit that for me, like, prototyping is not the most fun bit for me. So I'm just being honest, you know. I mean, that's what people come here for, honesty. So, you know,
okay.
So what is your favorite thing?
What's my favorite thing about prototyping? When I don't have to make another prototype. That's my favorite because then the game is finished.
My favorite thing is a prototype which isn't as big as Kingmaker, which has got over 300 cards and 250, I don't know how many tokens, and it's just, oh dear.
I mean, I think the saying is you made a rod for your own back there.
I didn't realize how big the rod was, but it's quite a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a heavy weight to carry.
Somebody's got to do it. It might as well be me. I am retired, so theoretically, I've got all the time in the world.
Matt, surely there's at least one thing you can say that you enjoy about prototyping.
Only one, please.
I don't. To be absolutely honest, like for me, it's just very much a means to an end. I don't know if it. Like, I think some people really enjoy. Okay,
but do you know
like
the practical applications, like just the practical purpose of prototyping?
There is one thing I enjoy, which is, and it would happen a lot before us, and it would be where you'd have 15 copies of prototypes, especially if they were just cards, and just cutting out cards is very relaxing. And I've never bothered to get a what do they call, a guillotine. Just because I found the actual physical thing of cutting fairly relaxing, if a little bit tedious. But
a guillotine is a good way to get loads of cards wrong at once, isn't it? Let's be honest.
that is true. Yeah, I'm not trained properly in the use of a guillotine because
I
never worked out well for me.
No, I think I found certainly, and we have a guillotine here, and I usually don't use it for cards because you only need to get one sheet slightly out of alignment, and then you have to reprint and then redo it, and it's quicker, probably quicker overall to do it by scissors. I don't know.
Okay, so Alex at least says, it's useful for playtesting. Surely, Matt, you must agree that that's a brilliant thing about it. That without prototypes.
But sometimes the best playtests are where you just chat to people and then realize your game's already terrible, so you didn't need a prototype to do that. You've got to the next version. No, of course I'm being a little bit what's the word? A little bit stupid, but yeah. What am I sending people to guillotine now? Apparently, that's what's going on in the.
If anyone was wondering, I was doing a wee bits of stretching because of my reminder. Maya's got a cutter that cuts things instead of cutting Maya. Or maybe instead of Maya having to cut things, and it's brilliant.
That sounds a little bit, it could be read different ways, that comment. So I hope it's I hope Maya's okay.
Yeah. This is what people have interpreted your rant as. But,
well, I mean, it is known that the Cambridge playtest group is a very harsh group to come to. Between Brett and myself, we don't only give harsh feedback, we also literally send people to a guillotine. So watch out. Yeah,
on you go. If Brett doesn't like your game, then that's it for you.
Yeah, don't worry. I mean, your game will never be fixed because you won't be here anymore. But
harsh but fair. We certainly weed out the bad ones.
I mean, you saw it in the fine print. I mean, you turned up. You agreed. So anyway.
Hello, Marcus. And you can go to the playtest group once. Okay, I'm going to try and bring some sense to this conversation, which is a really weird position for me to be in, to be the sensible one. So prototypes are brilliant because, that's the moment of possibilities. And I don't mean just a prototype as in something that you have to create custom for a particular game. Like, okay, if I open this L deck, like let's say I've got an idea for a new game. Hey, I've already got a prototype made. It just happens to be, I guess that's a definitional thing. Like, would you count this as a prototype? Like, for Make a Word Search, genuinely, I joked about this with Alan, but once I've got this idea that this is a game literally that you use blank paper and books for, would I then say this is a prototype? But let's say we're just counting the stuff that you make custom for a game. In that case, I would say it kind of feels like the first step of an adventure. You're embarking upon it, and there's so many possibilities, and you could go in so many different directions, and it's exciting. How can you not, be excited by that? So that is why I think that prototyping is kind of brilliant. Okay. Now let's go to the questionably quick questions, if we have any, for like maybe 5 minutes or so. If anyone and of course you can ask questions based on the topic along the way, but feel free to chime in with any questions that you have for any of our guests or for everyone. And the first question I like to ask is, where exactly are you? What time is it? I am in Glasgow, Scotland. It is 10:20. Let's go clockwise.
I am in War Boys. It's 10:21. That's because my clock's slightly fast. And I'm where I normally am. I'm sitting at my computer with a mild headache. But there you go. That's just where it is nowadays.
Okay, I'm sitting near Munich. It's 11:20, and I want to say hello to Marcus and Uli. With Marcus yesterday in the chat, I playtested yesterday. So we have
Nice.
He's from Vienna. He's also a board game designer. He has several games out, and every Monday we have a Zoom prototype test group. So. Yeah.
Nice.
I'm quite jealous that you're able to do some in-person playtesting. I mean, I probably technically could here so I'm in Prague, and it's also 11:21. Not actually that far from probably where you are, Rita, I guess. Well, I mean, so realistically.
So Monday evening is always a highlight of the week now.
That's just reminded me of what we miss. But anyway. Yeah, so that's where I am, 11:21, and it's kind of lightly snowing. I don't know, Rita, have you got some like light kind of rain, snow? Where I always sort of think that Central Europe has similar weather, but maybe not. Anyway.
I mean, we had quite a bit of ice that I saw on my morning walk, and Marcus says the test session yesterday was fantastic. Alex asks, what is your favorite source of renewable energy? I mean, I think, oh man, just having to pick one. I guess given the location of where we are, I'm going to go with wind. What's about you, Alan?
Heat pumps. Partly because I have no idea how that can possibly work, but they do apparently. And I'd like to have a heat pump here, but I think cost hasn't come down. To replace a boiler with a heat pump costs about 10 grand or something, and you'd have to have spare money lying around, which most people don't have. But heat pumps, if somebody can give us a sentence on why heat pumps work. I read something about heat pumps a while ago, and I think I understood it for about half an hour, and then I thought, actually no, I have to read it again to understand it again. So it's a bit weird. Ground heat pumps, ground source heat pumps.
So I go with the sun.
Good choice. Good choice. Well, I have a bit of an advantage. I do actually work as a scientist in renewable energy, so I should probably have a good answer to this. I can somewhat answer your question about heat pumps, or at least geothermal energy, Alan. All it is it's just a different way to heat water. I mean, that's kind of most of all these things about how do you make steam. And just geothermal energy is just a way of you just use the heat in the rocks deep below the earth to heat up water and make steam. That's basically it. Yeah,
but we haven't got hot rocks below us here, have we? In War Boys. So how does it work with a place which hasn't got, something like Iceland, where you've got?
Well, that's different. I mean, I think that's the thing I don't know so much about, sort of the personal heat pump source. But yeah, I know more about the geothermal spots where. But there in Australia, for example, there are actually quite a few places that have access to this. I think it's all to do about the depth that you can access the. Iceland's a very special case because it's literally like a volcanic island, but there are a lot of other places around the world. But for me, I actually quite like tidal energy. Like there've been various things like proposed to put a kind of a thing under like the Bristol Channel. Is it called the Bristol Channel? Someone from the UK?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Bristol Channel. So they want to put a huge boom under the water and use the tidal movements through that bay or estuary and you can get a lot of power that way actually. So that's very interesting. Technologically very difficult, but
this could be a wonderful topic for a board game.
Actually, it's interesting that you say that. So maybe slightly off topic, but a friend of mine, Matteo Menopause. I feel like Menapace. He's Italian. Apologies, Matteo, if you're listening. He's a fantastic game designer. Was a resident game designer, like artist in residence at the V&A for a while. Anyway, he's now working with Matt Leacock on a climate change cooperative game. actually,
Cool.
and they've started posting blog posts about it actually on Medium. So I'd recommend anyone checking out that if they can find it. Oh yeah, thank you, Bess. Yeah, perfect.
I'm in your mind. I know what you are going to say before you even say it. Boom.
All that positivity is going to go away if you're in my mind, though. It's going to, you're just going to start. You'll be the what are those? The Muppets, the two critics in the box seats or something. I feel like, yeah.
Stetler and
Oh no,
Waldorf,
I'm all kinds of. I think you've got plenty of positivity in you, Matt.
They're still good in you. They're still good. Yeah, okay.
So yes, that is a really good question. Bez starts playing Let's Be a Landlord, and
Luck Be a Landlord. Let's Be a Landlord is a very different game. It's sort of like capitalist. I think we all want to play the game Let's Be a Landlord, realistically, if we could, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, it depends. Like, I think that. Anyway, let's not get there. Let's not go there. Is Monopoly suggests say that is a very good point. Let's Be a Landlord is basically just remaking Monopoly. But Aquasulus mentions hydro energy, those big pontoons that sit in the waves twist the pontoons and the twisting pumps oil through turbines. That's some. Is that hydro energy?
No, I think it's actually wave, and it's wave energy, like the thing in the Bristol Channel, because I suspect Alex could correct me, but the pontoon's basically, because the water level is changing relative to the pontoon. So as the water flows up that pontoon, it spins the. There's also like really cool. I'm sure if you've all seen the cool like little private wind energy things, which I think also not like the big wind turbines, but you can have like sort of almost personal wind energy in your backyard, and they have really cool sort of these shapes that are trying to catch the wind. These kind of circular, cylindrical kind of twisted things. It's quite cool. Sorry, okay. This is not a renewable energy stream.
So, hello, Tony. It is lovely to see you.
Speaking of positivity, here's Tony.
Hey, does that follow? Hello, Dina. And so we are now finally getting onto the main topic, which is about prototyping with all these wonderful people. And feel free to comment, ask questions, thumb like, follow. We'll try to keep it a bit more on topic today because, sometimes I just blather on, sometimes we're a bit more, okay, let's talk about prototyping. And let's start off saying, what is prototyping? What are we even talking about?
I did notice the word try there, Bez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alan, what's prototyping to you? Let me ask you the two questions that I asked earlier on. Genuinely, if I have if I want a game that has the cards 1 to 5 times, and then I make that using 2 decks of cards, have I made a prototype? Is that a prototype? For the purposes of this conversation. If I make a word search and I've got a bit of paper and a pen and a book, is that a prototype?
Yeah, any physical representation of the game that's in your brain at the time is a prototype, even if it uses whatever it uses. But I think if we're talking about board games and card games, and you're looking at playing with actual real people face to face, any physical representation counts, in my view. Of course, if you're doing it virtually, then it's going to have to be an electronic representation. But yeah, put it this way: if you were designing a card game and you didn't have any cards handy, and you used tiles instead and scribbled on them, and those were pretend cards, that is still a prototype. It's not necessarily what you want. Or if you just scribble on some pieces of paper and cut them out into little squares, and those are representing cards, that's fine. Yeah, any physical representation, literally, I think, is a prototype.
Yeah, I definitely go with Alan. And I think making a prototype is the start. It's just the first step for a game. So if you never have a prototype, so everything is in your head, there will be never a game. So if you have so I have a box in here where with little pieces of things where I scratched something on, and that mostly was my first prototypes. And I have this in my box, and sometimes I go in the box and look what I have done 1 year before, and look, so oh, this could be nice, maybe I should work on it. Yeah, so this is, I think it's the first step, and this is something where most people it's the bridge to go over. Yeah, and this is, I think, the thing where most people have fears to do this, because they shamed off my prototype is not beautiful enough, or it's not good enough. So don't care about it, just do it.
Well, yes, apparently, as I'm being slandered in the chat by Tony, you know, they don't have to be. Yes, as you say, Rita, they don't have to be beautiful. They, you know, apparently I make them out of anything.
Get used to it. I think get used to it, Matt. You know, it's going to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, gosh, you know, why don't you come on here, Tony, and tell us what you really think instead of lobbing bombs from the chat? You know, like anyway. But yeah, no, I of course I agree with. But I think the key point is that prototype is something you can play. You know,
so I'm just curious, which ones of these are not true?
None of them. I think isn't the base point to just not trust anything that comes out of Tony's mouth? I mean, isn't that just a good?
I mean, I have actually made prototypes of toilet paper.
Oh really? Wow. Okay. No,
yeah, it was. You know, it was when I was in a holding cell for a couple of days, and I had literally nothing else. Long story.
I've never had any beetles.
Oh, okay.
To be honest, it's possible.
I mean, they'd have to be dead beetles, otherwise they sort of go away, wouldn't they? You know, you wouldn't be able to.
I think that depends. I think that depends on the game, Matt. Really, yeah.
That is true, but yeah, I mean,
random actions.
Do you have an example? Do you have an example here? Maybe some toilet paper you want to show us?
Yeah, Bez. I'm not sure. Yeah, well, I mean, that is an interesting. But ultimately, like the prototype is just and what I said about a means to an end, I think, is right. It's the, you know, you want to get to the point of actually experiencing the game, and that's what a prototype lets you do. And in some ways, if physically it might, like the physicality of it doesn't matter as much if it because what I said about I said it somewhat glibly about just talking about a game and then putting it away, but for some cases I know that even the act of just putting something on the table, even if it actually you can't even manipulate the physical pieces, it puts everyone in the kind of like the mode to think about the game, to engage with it. And that might even give you exactly what you need as well to make your next prototype. You know, that it'll generate discussion or things like that. So.
Could I interject and be a little bit controversial? I actually think that Tony's prototypes are really good. I mean, because Tony can draw. I can't draw for toffees. I would try to draw for money, but I couldn't do it. Tony's prototypes are really beautiful because he can do lovely line art and cartoons. Have you seen Tony's prototypes of things like Aleph Null or Lux Turner or Snowdonia things? They are very evocative, and you can get straight into that. I think that kind of mental state that Tony is aiming for with his prototypes. And I think Tony has got a gift of being able to do those things really quickly. If I want any artwork done, I have to get Charlie to do it because as I said, I can't draw, and that can take a little bit of time. And there's a danger that you get distracted down the route of doing really, really nice artwork, and the prototype needs to be a quick, dirty thing. And yeah, I would strongly go with that. Tony's really good at that kind of prototyping. Sorry, I'm being controversial. Actually,
no, I mean, Alan,
I know it's not supposed to do that, but
it sounds sounds really tough, you know, relying on your in-house illustrator, Charlie, you know, like for us mere mortals who, you know, can't draw and don't have, you know, somebody sitting next to them. It's a bit more difficult.
That is true.
People wanted to know which game it was. It's not a game that's went anywhere. fairly sure I've told this story before. I'm not expecting people to go chase it down, but ask me about it on a Friday or on a day when I don't have people around. I was in a holding cell. I'd been locked up for having scissors in public. True story. And then I was in a holding cell for about 48 hours. And yeah, with nothing much to do, there was bits of paper, and I folded some of them, pulled some of them to distinguish between different pieces. Anyway, that was, but yeah, I'll just flash these up because they are amusing. And I will say that I've got a vague definition, which I really agree with what Matt was saying, that it's a means to an end. And I think that a prototype is something that basically allows the game to be played, although maybe that's not quite right. Maybe it allows you to work a little bit more on the game. And Tony says, I need to visualize it as soon as possible to help the playtest. And so, yeah, if that's what you need to facilitate the playtest to help you move on to the next parts, then for sure, that's a useful thing to have in a prototype. But we're really not talking about pre-production copies here. Here, at least for today, I think it's useful to concentrate on what's the first thing that you do to get from that initial idea, that initial bolt of inspiration. This is something that I want to get paid to. Whether it's sitting on a table, I don't think it has to be physical, especially in this day and age, but maybe it's digital, I don't know. Maybe it is just, okay, we've got a sheet of paper, like Alan said, okay, that's fairly legitimate. And it's whatever tools you need to help you get the game play tested. I mean, let's go round again. Do you think that's reasonable?
I strongly think if you're going to play face to face, it is any physical representation, as I said before, literally any, really. And if it's digital, then it has to be any digital representation, I think. And I think that Tony's point Tony says he has to visualize it, which is great. I think you need to have an artifact there that you can manipulate. I remember a playtest, well, in inverted commas, playtest that Sebastian Bleasdale did at one of our designers' days. He was literally had an idea. He had an idea for a game, and he made some cards, and he hadn't fleshed out the idea at all. But he just did some cards. I think I can't remember how many were, 30, 40 cards, which were just scribbled on. And he did things like dealing them out, and then we were kind of making up rules with some guidance from him at the time. So it was literally to see whether the ideas that he was suggesting would actually work. So going back to what Matt said, it might be just to test out whether the idea works. And if it doesn't work, you can say, oh, well, it didn't work, move on to something else. And if it does work, if there's a germ of a good idea in there, because you've done that physical representation and you're moving stuff around, then you can go with something. It's actually quite encouraging if it doesn't work in a lot of ways, because then you can just scrap it and go on to something else, which is more profitable.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to add, to be honest, beyond what we had. Rita?
Me too.
Okay, so we're basically agreed that there's this nebulous idea that it's whatever you need to get yourself to the next stage. So let's actually look at these questions. Once we have the initial idea, what do we need to consider before making the prototype? What parts of the game have to be decided? And I think it's worth, what do you feel like you have to decide before you start the game? Because personally, I find benefit in just having, even if I'm not using these as letters, even if they were literally just the closest cards I had to me. Let's say I'm imagining some sorts of deck building game, and these all have special effects. I might just play with them for the kinesthetic memory, to try and play it in my own mind as a solo test. I might scribble on, but Is that something that you do, like kind of just pushing pieces around? Just curious, Alan.
Yeah, at the early stages, I will just just make some stuff and push things around. I mean, when I did March of Progress, literally, just a quick explanation. Because Tony and I have had this Surprise Day Games company, because we published games, card games, we would get the off-cut blank cards. So I've got 10,000 blank cards in my loft. So if I ever want to get some cards, I can just grab a load of cards and scribble on them, which is really helpful. So always have a stack of cards to hand. It's really helpful. Literally just scribble on them. So I did that with March of Progress, and then literally just play around. And if you need some pieces, have a big cupboard there with some wooden pieces in it, and grab whatever relevant pieces there are. If you need ducks, have some ducks available, you know, that kind of thing. And then you can move them around. Literally that, just for experimental. It's a first type physical representation. Do that. That's all you need at the first. Just something which will concretize what you're trying to do and see if it works. If it doesn't work, at least you know. I've not found a use for the ducks yet, I stress, but I'm sure there will be some use for ducks.
Yeah, I had all sorts of army people from the pound shop. Like, I got 3 buckets of them for £3 and 3 different colors. But anyway, Matt.
It's interesting. How do I put this? I think the way I work, I wouldn't recommend people work, because it's just, I think, but there is a difference. I think I'm sure everyone in this conversation would agree that you change the way you work over time, like as you and there are certain parts of the process you get better at, and you can kind of sometimes skip corners a little bit because you're confident enough in what you're doing or things like that. And I think unless you have to go through the process of learning it, and it's no point skipping the corner before you've learned what you're doing. So my point to that is that for me, I don't actually like pushing like that kind of thing of just like putting scraps together and pushing around, because I find that at this point, it doesn't help me get to the next stage. Like I don't fully sort of engage with the idea until I have something that is like a little bit closer to what the game, like what we would think of like a kind of a mid-level prototype is, like with, say, printed cards. Or I mean, part of it is that I'm a terrible, like I have no artistic ability and my handwriting's terrible, and basically if I just make something slapdash, then it'll just be so hard to play, even if I'm just trying it myself, that it won't help me get to the next stage. And I mean, that's what the first prototype should be. All the first prototype is trying to do is you'll immediately trash it. All it's doing is getting you to the second prototype. And so for me, because I know that I need to kind of make a bit more effort in that first prototype for it to be useful. But I wouldn't say that that's necessarily good advice, because I think putting any barriers in your way of making that first prototype is not worth it. You need to just, put that discomfort away and just go and make a first prototype, even if that means grabbing some stuff and just pushing stuff around. That's great. But it's not necessarily what I do now, because I know that that's not what helps me get to the next stage.
So the way I work, I would also not recommend, because every first step, I write the scene. So how look the things on the table, I write it down on a paper and make some noticing, and for example, make some first ideas for cards. And what you have then is a lot of piece of papers with information. And yeah, so this is always my first step. But when I write it down, the second step is nearly doing the first prototype. So this is, I mostly do it together. So yeah, but then you have this.
I mean, what I'm really hearing is that, and I'm going to flash up some of Tony's comments and other things, that there's a lot of people who are actually treating the prototyping process as an extension of that ideation phase of kind of pushing bits around. I understand, Matt, maybe, and part of it is, what do you enjoy? How does your mind work? What sparks the creativity? Because for me, literally, this I think it was called. It was one of the 2016.1a, one of like that long series of games that I can't remember. But when I did my Inspired by Matt, the 84 game designs in 84 days, something like that. But anyway, the point is that for me, moving bits back and forth and saying, okay, I have this economy, how does this work? And that went into a game that I've never actually got into the final stage, but that's at least allowed me to, without playing the game, just pushing bits back and forth, it's allowed me to understand a bit more. And it's allowed me to come to the table with other people with a game that wouldn't break in the first, like, in the same way that it might have otherwise. It's just a little way of me kind of being able to do that. And for me, pushing things around helps me learn. I am maybe quite a kinesthetic person. And so for Alan or Rita, if writing stuff down is good for you, then great. If Matt, it sounds like you're all about just sitting back and visualizing everything in your mind. And Tony mentions mocking cards up in PowerPoint. Sorry, Rita, I'm going to... mocking cards up in PowerPoint and heavily iterating them before first print really helps with the thought experiments against mechanisms. Info presentation can enhance or reduce mechanisms in my head. And yeah, the first prototype being virtual.
Bez, I think you just have a really good point about it. It does come down to everybody works. And I'm looking at the chat. I know that, yeah, that we need the disclaimer. Everyone works differently, and maybe, you know, obviously people want to learn or to just hear what works well. And I realized maybe I should have said that for me, with the first prototype process, I guess why I talk about getting in and actually making a set of cards or making a board, maybe with more details, because for me, that process is how I sort of answer all the questions I need to answer in order to have a first game. You know, you have to kind of, so for some people, like for Bez, it sounds like you push stuff around and that answers your questions. You're like, oh, if I move this, then what happens? And you know, and for me, you know, actually making those components digitally or you know, that forces me to kind of make all decisions about that I may have gone like, oh, this would be cool in my head, but when I make the first prototype, I have to actually say, well, how does that actually work? And if you're making a component, then it has to say how it works or you know, suggest how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I use different approaches for different projects depending on what the game is. You know, if it's a very small game, I might run something out quickly. But looking back on what I've actually done, I think I don't. I think I generally, as you were saying, Bez, as part of the ideation process, I do make things, even if they're very, very crude, in order to get it more solid in my own mind as to what works and what doesn't work. So for me, I think, looking back on my process, not really realizing it, prototyping is an integral part of the ideation. So writing stuff, I certainly will write something down like Rita does, and I often do myself a little kind of project brief type of thing in order to get things clearer. But the prototyping, the first prototype for me, is concretizing that ideation process. And until I've done that, it's just an idea, just a game idea. It's not got reality. And I need that. Well, it could be virtual or it could be physical, I guess. But having some bits, having some actual game components are what I need to concretize it in my mind, really.
Rita, anything to add? Okay, so I think, Matt, you made a really interesting point that it's all about answering the questions, and that kind of cuts to the heart of it. Because whether it's prototyping, whether it's the playtesting itself, the only point of doing any of this is ultimately to answer the question of what's the game that I want to make? What is that game? And once you understand what rules are working for the game that you want to make, I mean, understanding the game you want to make is kind of its own thing that permeates the entire design process, like your target audience and who it's for and what aims you have with this game. Hopefully but yeah, Dinos mentions alpha testing with a game that had a 9,000 word rulebook. That sounds like quite a bit to have actually written that much, but if that person needs to have these things down, I know David Brain works in a similar way, always writing down a rulebook before the first playtest. And I know that, yeah, Kieran Symington also works in kind of a similar way of, you might come to a playtest with literally 400 cards, and it'll be like, wow, this is actually working. Okay, and the next, maybe in 2 weeks' time, Kieran Symington will come up with like a totally different, like scrapping half the game. And I think that's a key thing. You need to be willing to scrap what you've done. So it needs to be never, I'm going to amazingly need, I mean, done.
Should we? Sorry, Bez, you broke up a bit there, but I don't know. But you did make a good point about the answering questions. And actually, I don't know, you know, at Michael Fox's stream, this IdleCon, and I did it a little bit on my stream where we were, you know, working on a game, and it was interesting. We started with roll and write games, or like X and write games, you know, where you, and it's interesting when you start with a genre that you know quite well, or that has a lot of like norms to it. The beauty of that, to make a first prototype, is actually you get to answer all these questions automatically without even thinking of them. When you say I'm making a roll and write, well, you know, it's going to be a game on paper. It's going to be, you know, with pens. We're going to have some randomizing element. It's probably solvable. Essentially, everyone's playing on their own sheet. You get to answer all these questions without even having to think about them. And of course, the kind of, I mean, in real life, what exhausts us all is making decisions, right? Every time you have to make a new decision, that's work. Kind of, you know, there's argument there. So when you're designing, when you can make all these decisions at once by saying it's a roll and write game, that actually can be a huge springboard towards, you know, making that first prototype. It'd be very useful.
Yeah, 100%.
As long as that doesn't constrain you too much. I mean, because you may want to end up designing something which isn't a roll and write, or which is a particular weird take on it, which doesn't meet the kind of, if you like, the doctrine of roll and write. So
no, absolutely, it's not meant to be it's not prescriptive. I guess it's just it's a great example of how that's one way that it could. Yeah, but of course, if you want to make, and actually, I think for my own personal experience, actually, my best games have been the ones which have undergone a lot of change in their kind of prototyping and development. And I think that's because you didn't know what the game was at the start, but they've changed so much.
I agree.
And that's actually where you sometimes find the best things when you start with sort of none of those answers, and you really put in the work. But
or you start with I mean, I think I said before on this show occasionally, is that with Confucius, it started out as being a 66 card game, and it turned into a medium heavy Euro game. But you know, so you need to be able to change direction. If something doesn't work in the direction you thought you were going in, you need to be able to change direction rapidly and go in a totally different direction. Because I suppose it's what is it what sculptures say? You're discovering what the image is in the medium you're using, something like that. That's nice and pretentious. I like that. I'll stick with it.
Yeah. I was thinking, and I actually hadn't realized that you did a game jam yourself, Matt. I guess I must have missed that.
No, don't worry. There's lots of things.
When was that?
The 2 previous Fridays, I've worked on this game essentially. So
okay, so it's more of you making this game on camera rather than it being a everyone gets involved sort of game jam.
Yeah. So I have this thing where viewers can redeem a certain number of points and make me do a game jam, where, you know, they'll give me a topic. And so it was Alex who gave me a topic of sort of animals and habitats or something like that. Alex could tell me how wrong I am, and then I would work on the game just on stream. Where would I start if I had that idea? Where would I go? And I just show my process, and then I continued working on it the week after. And I probably will keep doing it over different streams.
I think this is an interesting thing because, a prototype, you know, a couple of things I've realized. Firstly, it has to be a means to an end. And using your words back at you, Matt, sorry. If playtesting is a good way to find out what's going well, what are people enjoying, what are people not enjoying, then prototype has to be there to facilitate the playtesting. The second part of prototyping is that as a result of making this prototype, your mind goes into places. you read things. Is there anything other benefits that I'm missing, or is that basically it? Is that the two ways that a prototype can be good, either by sparking up ideas or by facilitating playtest? Matt.
Oh, I was just gonna. I've been talking a lot. I think, can we go to Rita? Just.
So usually I have three different prototypes. So the first is the one with the scissor and the first thing. The second one is for my playtesters, and the third one is for the publishers. So when I think the prototype is nearly finished, oh, beautiful. The prototype is nearly finished. I make it more beautiful so that the publisher can imagine what this game could be. So I think this is very important because it depends on the publisher. So some publishers can imagine things and they say, oh, this is great, and then we could do this, and then we could do this, and oh, maybe we could change the theme in this, and we can do this. But there are some publishers who have, I think, no imagination. I don't know. So they look at it and say, oh, okay, and what is this? And so this is, it's different. As I said, it depends on the publisher, but I think it's very important that you have some representative prototype for a publisher. So it has not been finished or something, but so that the publisher can imagine what is the game about.
Well, that's a really good point to kind of also show the vision. So I guess it also comes back into that early playtesting. Sorry to break the flow a wee bit. And I do want to quickly say hello to Joanne. It's lovely to see you pop in. Thank you for joining us. Saw Joanne on Amadeus's stream yesterday. We got chatting about board games. And Dina. Okay, so, yep, thank you for reminding me to stretch. But, yeah, so you've got prototyping to allow the playtest to happen, but also to give, whether it's a publisher or even a playtester, a sense of, this is the kind of game that I want it to be. I mean, if you're able to artistically use bright colors on your prototype, then you can say, well, this is kind of what I'm looking for. And so at least playtesters instantly get an idea of it. And if you're going to a convention, actually, I'm just thinking of this. Now, if you go to a convention, maybe you want to have the prototype be pretty enough so that convention goers are like, oh, what's this? Maybe I'll give this a go and check it out.
I wanna say something about that, because sometimes I have a prototype and I have some plastic tiles from another game and I played it with that. So, and then I go to a publisher and then they said, oh, it's plastic, it's too expensive. So they have no idea that maybe they could do it in with paper. So this is very fascinating. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I was going to say you need to name some names, Rita. I completely agree. It is to me, or at least my experiences, it's almost entirely random whether some publishers, will see prototypes very literally, and will sort of think. I mean, at least myself and Rita, I don't know what for me, like theme is fairly unimportant in a lot of games. I don't mind if the theme changes, and it's interesting that a publisher will sometimes look at a thing and think that you're assuming that this is the only theme it needs to be, and it, if it doesn't make complete sense in that theme, then we can't possibly do better. Or and the same with components. Most of my games are very simple components. It'll be cardstock or something, or paper. There's nothing particularly. But of course, that doesn't mean it can't be better than it. Of course, the great advantage is when you have a publisher who does see the potential in something, and then they can add their own. And I think for my own personal experience, something like FunForge is a great example for me of a company that has, I've had Professor Evil sit all the time, and Monumental with them. In both cases, both of the prototypes were very, very simple. They were printed off. I don't even use like thick cardstock. I just use like 160 GSM paper, essentially, that you can print with a laser printer, and that's what I use for pretty much everything. And in both cases, it's just that it's not. There were no graphics. It was all very, very kind of functional, I would say, but not thematic at all. And FunForge was able to imagine in both cases these amazing worlds, and with the case of Monumental, even more incredible components that could support that experience.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the generic question is there: how good does a prototype need to be visually? And yeah, as Matt said, it really depends on the group. I mean, for example, we've had, I suppose we've probably all experienced those cases where you have a playtest session, which you're doing with some people, and you continually get comments about the graphics. Oh, that particular color should be a different color, or, these should have rounded corners. And you think, well, no, what we're focusing on is the game mechanics, the gameplay, the actual visual, the physical representation in it is only important in its essentials. And I think it's quite disappointing if you've got publishers, well, I know that I've had experience with that myself too, publishers who will focus more on the theme that you've put on it, rather than having the imagination to dream of something that the thing works with better. But then that's why I like to go with a long-term relationship with the publisher, so you get the idea of how they think and they get an idea of how you think. I think that's a good solution to that one. But playtesting with playtesters can jump to the wrong conclusions about what you're trying to test, even if you're very clear with the instructions. And it's something which I think in the virtual world that we're in now at the moment is even more critical, because I mean, if I'm doing something on Tabletopia and I'm continually getting comments back about, yeah, but this bit didn't work, and it's a Tabletopia thing, or it's a tabletop simulator thing, it's not to do with what I'm trying to present. It's particularly with a more complex game. You can see I'm influenced a bit by my Kingmaker experiences here. If I've got the sizes wrong on Tabletopia, that doesn't mean that the components in the physical game will have the wrong size. And getting around this in the current situation is really difficult. And one question for you guys here and people in the chat as well is, how are you coping with that difficulty between the virtual representation and the physical representation? If I'm trying to develop a game which is going to be a physical game, how do we overcome that lack of face-to-face playtesting with the real thing?
Rita, I saw that there was something earlier you wanted to respond to.
I wanted to say something before. So can we just put it in?
Yep. Please.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing which I think is very important for when you show a prototype to a publisher is that the prototype should be as good as you can, and also the rules. And what I do is I write some more ideas in the rules, so when the rules are finished, I made some additional information for maybe which other topic you can use and so on. Because what I remembered what my experiences when I have an appointment with a publisher, and then I show it to the publisher, and I tell them, yes, these things could be also in paper, or this and this, so that every information about the game, what could they do so that it's not so expensive, or and so on, I write down in the rules, because the person who tests for the publisher may not the person you showed it. So if you if someone has your prototype for the first time and has not the information he should have, maybe he said, oh, it's not, yes, okay, but the theme, and I don't know. So yes, this is very tricky. So everything I have an additional ideas for the game, I write down in the rules. Yeah.
I think that for sure the prototype that you send to a publisher has to be slightly different potentially to the prototype that you have yourself. I mean, sure, the art doesn't need to be there, but in Matthew's case, you know, frankly, if you do it all with joined up writing and I can't read, you know, a couple of the cards, if you tell me, okay, these are the possible cards, I'm like, okay, at least I know which one it is. With a little bit of help, I can get on with playing the game. But if you're sending it to a publisher, if it's not printed text, at least it has to be block capitals or something so that you can read it without Matt actually being there and looking over your head to say, but I think I'm going to draw a line under the later stage prototyping. And for today, let's concentrate, because I think it would be really good to get in depth about that step between that ideation and the first playtest. I mean, so firstly,
Sorry, Bez, do you mean the first playtest with other people or the first solo playtest that you're having? Are you doing that as ideation? First playtest with other people, I think.
Let's go from first playtest with, let's go up to the first playtest with other people from the having that initial idea. And yeah, it's also blurry because, you know, Rita and Alan and I were talking about this 2 weeks ago, where we talked about, okay, what is that first idea? And that might be such a nebulous thing. Dina earlier in chat suggested, oh, I need to catch up with the chat a wee bit. Sorry about this, peeps. So Dina suggested that, sorry, I've missed sexy photos. Oh yeah, so Alex says, the best prototype is one you wouldn't mind scrapping and starting over when something needs to be changed. And 100%, I think that is a requirement of a prototype. I don't think that makes it the best prototype. I just think that makes it good enough, frankly, if I may be so stringent. I think that if you aren't willing to scrap it and start over, then it's not done that work as an initial prototype. Quick hello to Mars Derry. It is lovely to have you in chat. Joanne mentions teaching the games, and I assume this is to do with one of my games, which, yeah, I should have YouTube videos to explain the rules rather than just having that for some of, yeah, I feel like Tom Cauldron does actually have YouTube videos, did make YouTube videos for all of them. So if you ask me after the chat, I can send you to YouTube videos. But this is a wee bit out with the main topic, but it's a fairly good point in game design. Just how do you teach your playtesters, or how do you teach everyone? Having that, well, some people actually learn from paper, so maybe having that written instructions can be helpful. But yeah, sorry about that. Yep, it's, so let me know after the fact and I will find Tom's videos and send them to you. And yeah, just going back to that, reaffirming what Alex said, and some people don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. You've got to just make something to some degree. So yeah, let's get back. Oh, so what Dina said originally was that all you need to have is one mechanic. That's all you need to know before you go into that first playtest. I would like to ask Rita, and let's concentrate on each person for maybe 5-10 minutes if we can. Let's each person give one example, whether it's a recent game or your first game or a game in the middle, whatever game, just some short case study of how you went from that initial idea to that first prototype. And if you're ready to talk about that, Rita, that would be amazing. Oh, you're muted.
Can Matthew start, please?
Sure.
Oh, I see. You're getting me back there, Rita, first. Throwing it to you before. Oh, gosh, I'm on the big screen now. Oh, pressure. Yeah, so what's... So the process of going into that first prototype.
Ideation to first playtest.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I can think of it for a recent game I've made, which is... and it is actually broadly the same for virtual and physical prototypes, because right now, basically, I take all the same steps, and then either I print it out or I port it over to Tabletop Simulator. So, yeah, so I had an idea for a sort of a painting. It's like a Splendor-esque kind of, light family game. You're mixing paints together and painting paintings. If you think Splendor and you're putting paints together and you make paintings, which are like contracts. So it's a small game. It would be some cards and some like little tokens for paint. The original idea was just a set of actions, essentially, a very simple set of 3 or 4 actions, how you get more paint and how you mix it. And for me, one of the key things was when you would take the paintings, you wouldn't have to complete them immediately, but when you take them, you get a special ability. So it sort of chains together these actions together. And for a game like that, because, and those are my favorite games to kind of, they go much more quickly. I think either Rita or Alan said something about this earlier, but, the easier a game is, the more you can kind of hold it in your head at once, and it helps you make that first prototype. So in this case, all I knew is I had to make this deck of cards, because that's how the game functions. That's the thing that's to be designed. And, I said, the first step is, well, what do I have to have on those cards? So I needed, basically, each of them has to have like a recipe of different paints and a point value, which I can, and, in the first case, I basically just make up a point value, or I think I probably came up with a very simple, sorry, I should start. I have an Excel spreadsheet, which I will have a row for each of the cards. I do this because that's, from there, I then use data merge in InDesign to make, a PDF of the cards to print out or to put into Tabletop Simulator. So yeah, I have my spreadsheet. Each row is a particular card. I start with the combinations of colors, and basically I just sort of enumerated all the different combinations you could have. I defined that I have 7 colors, and I sort of make different mixes of them. I just try and have a representation. I don't know exactly what the whole mix should be, but I just know I want to vary. I want 30 cards and I want some mix of them. So I do that, and I came up with like a simple formula, like basic colors should be about 1 point. Advanced colors are 2 points, and then I just add up what the colors are, and that gives me a guess at what the point, how much it should be worth. And then the only other element that I need on the card is a special ability, and I just basically came up with like 5 or 6 special abilities, and then just copied them across the cards. So I didn't try and come up with 30 special abilities. I just I did 5 and then 6 copies of each, because it doesn't really matter. They're probably going to change. I just need something with a little bit of variation so that you have a little bit of choice. And that essentially then that's populated the thing, and that wasn't that much that I had to come up with creatively, so that the process is fairly quick. And I sort of cut the corner of having to make lots of different powers, because that's where you could get stuck on. You could go like, oh, I need 15 powers. That's a lot of work. That's going to take me a while. I was like, no, I'm just going to do 5. Shortcut that. And then I had my rows, and then from that I used InDesign, which has this data merge feature, which basically you can input a CSV file, and it will, and you can have a template for what the card is, and it'll spit out, either like a 3x3 sheet to print it out, or bless you, Rita, 3x3 sheet to print out, or like individual JPEG files, because for Tabletop Simulator, individual JPEGs are easier. And in this particular case, I was going to Tabletop Simulator, so actually then it's just a case of doing the wrangling of Tabletop Simulator. That's a whole other topic which we really talk about. There's other streams about that, and now I have a digital version which I could essentially play quite quickly. Is that what you were hoping for, Bez?
Yeah. And so with those CSV files, that's a format of basically a spreadsheets type thing.
Yeah, it stands for comma separated values. So if you're in any spreadsheet, so if you use Excel or OpenOffice, it'll always have the option to save, instead of saving it as like an XSLX, or instead of saving it as a Microsoft Excel file format, you can always save it as a CSV. CSV is a much more open to be readable by lots of different programs, essentially.
And that's something that you can quite often use for putting in mailing lists. So
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Whatever. And
Yeah,
it's such a wonderful feature of InDesign. And if you don't have InDesign, you can of course use Nandeck, which I believe Rob Harper's really expert today. But yeah, I don't know if anyone has any questions for Matt specifically about that, but maybe Rita, if you're happy to go next.
So I want to show you a prototype which is not finished yet. I'm working for it for nearly 1 year now, but I really enjoy working on it. And so this is something I normally not start with. So I said I wanted to make a dice placement game. So normally I have an idea and then I start, but this time I said, I want to do something with dice placement. So, and when at night I can't sleep, so I had several ideas, and in the morning I started, and I had the idea to connect the dice with a environmental theme. So it's the theme is rubbish in the sea, and the first thing I did, and I really enjoyed it, I made the sea. So I show you the plan, and I made a beach with the sea. So this was really fun to do. So I really like painting, and I had so much fun to do this. And so I had some dices, and I had some cards, and I also do them with InDesign. So I have also the Creative Suite. So I do some cards, and then I had first I had some smaller boards, and then I had the dices. Please tell me. Yes, you're collecting trash. That's right, because we have different trash in the sea. So it's metallic or it's plastic, and we are going with our boats from way to way and collecting rubbish and bring it to the beach and getting points. So this is the idea, and this has a lot of playtesting rounds behind. And so the second thing I do, so first I had the dices in different colors, and you put them on so I can just show you how the game looks. So there are different things in here. So you go with the dice from here to here, so that I don't tell the whole rules now because they're a little bit more like this. But you go from here to here, and then you collect the rubbish. And the first thing my playtester said is, yeah, it's only dice. Isn't it too boring? So I started to make little boats where you can put the dices in, so that you have little speedboats where you can go there. And I had so much fun to create this game. So it's not finished yet because the rules are not completed yet, but I still like working on it and making more ideas of it, and like playtesting. And I think I don't want to call you, but for future reference.
Oh, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Dices. I'm sorry. So I still do playtesting with it, but I like the theme, and I think this is very important, so that when you work on a game very long, you are not bored of the game. So I have several games behind me. I'm a little bit bored of it, so that's why they are here and not here. And I think it's very important that you enjoy doing prototyping again.
That's a really good point. It's like the actual process of making these games has to be enjoyable and kept to be fun, because if you have fun with it, then being in that playful atmosphere is maybe going to help you come up with more ideas. And when we are giving ourselves permission to play and enjoy ourselves, and so it's easy for someone to say, oh, this is extraneous, this isn't important, this isn't necessary. But if you're having fun, then surely it is of benefit for the process. Dina wants to know a little bit more about this game. So we collect from the water. Could we collect from the beach? Can we rescue a turtle from trash?
Oh, with the turtle, I write it down. Maybe that's very interesting. I know that, as I said, the game is not finished yet. There are you can also collect from the beach, but yeah. So, but the most trash are in the sea. So when I started to create the game, I read about it, what kind of trash in the sea, and where's the most, and so on. So a stranded whale? I don't think so. A stranded whale. It definitely needs a turtle. Yes, I write it down. So maybe
that's the thing. And just through sharing this prototype, because it's captured people's imaginations and then it's facilitated, actually, it's gone back into that brainstorming phase, which is really interesting. I'm going to arbitrarily go next and talk a wee bit. Oh, let me actually change that banner because I'm not Rita. I should have a banner more about who I am, but in the absence of that, I wanted to quickly talk about two games very similar in a lots of ways, very different. One is a game that's, at the time, I think I called it Redonkulous. I'm not sure, it's now known as Yogi. The first ever prototype, it was like, okay, this is a game that's inspired by Flux. Here's a game that, okay, cards, what can cards do? They need to let you do these ridiculous, unfair things, steal from other people. Maybe when you have too few cards, you lose. Maybe there's a card that if someone has too few cards in hand, then the game ends and everybody else wins. It was intended that well before the deck ended, that would be the end of the game, but the deck ending would be the safety mechanism, as in, if the game hasn't ended by this point, at least the deck running out would finish it. And so for me, prototyping that was literally just a case of getting a bit of lined paper, writing down, okay, here's some possible ideas that I could have. Okay, actually, this is going well. Okay, I've got enough ideas. What I'm going to do is just get a bunch of A4 white paper, put it into 16ths, draw a card on each one, and write it out with my handwriting, maybe even draw a little picture depending on how I felt about that particular card. But then making up these cards, 16 to a page, I made about maybe 32 cards, something like that. And once I was like, okay, here's enough of an idea. So how many cards do I need for a deck? Okay, I probably need 48 cards because that's almost a full deck. And it's a multiple of 16, which was helpful given. And okay, I'll aim for that. I'll aim for this number. So it's a simulation of, because we are going to be playing for the whole thing. So I want to see the whole ecosystem. Now I played that and it got played, I want to say once, and that was it. Going back to Matt's points, it was like, yeah, this is an okay game. It's very overcomplicated. Take everything out except for this one card. And then it totally changed and became a completely different game, which is now known as Yogi. Anyway, the second version that I want to say was actually made very recently, which was early 2020. This was just before, I'm going to say, the world changed. So Nuremberg, I went to Nuremberg, I pitched a couple of things, and people are like, yeah, this isn't quite what we're looking for. We're looking like who's, you know, yellow, like not their imprints. I can't remember what Loki. That's the one, Loki. So I talked to Yellow, and then I got to an appointment, and they said, "Hey, this is good, but it's not really for us. We need something that we can put a bit more theme on. We don't want just abstract party games. Like have some pirates in it or something." And I was okay, fine. I get what you're looking for. Okay, and then I saw Hadi and like other people, and okay, I've got an idea what people are looking for. Now that's me. And now between Nuremberg and Cannes, there's like maybe a month or something. I was like, okay, I'm going to make a game. And I was like, okay, what game can I make? And I'm not going, basically it's a speed game. It's got a twist to it. I'm not going to go into the details, but I was like, okay, what parts are you able to match? Okay, let me make a very quick spreadsheet. I think I used Open Office or something like that, and just said, okay, there's this many cards of that, this many cards of that. Okay, what's the probability of having a match? Okay, that feels me. Let me tweak these numbers so it's like just using the sum at the bottom, because I know I want about 55 cards, so I need to work out how many. So each card had 2 attributes. So it was like, okay, 55 of this attribute, 55 of this attribute. How am I going to sort that out? Just changing the numbers, and it was okay, that makes sense. Okay, now I'm going to just draw it, and then now I've upgraded. I'm not using just bits or 16ths of paper. I'm using actual blank cards. So getting blank cards and then using colored marker pens, because it was like, this is a kid's game. It needs to be colorful. And then using like yellow and pink and blue. But anyway, so that was a prototype that I made. I played it and the interesting thing is, I think I had this conversation with Al and Paul before the show was starting about, you know, with some of the simplest games, sometimes you will try a lot of things, but sometimes by the time it's gone through your mind and you've actually made it, it might be nowhere near where it ends up, or conversely, it might be actually almost exactly where it ends up. And at this point, this game, you know, frankly, that very first prototype I made, I gave a copy of it to, I think it's okay to say anyway, yeah, I feel like it's okay to say, but I feel I should ponder that for a couple of minutes before doing so. But yeah, I gave it to a company, and then another company also wanted a copy, so I spent half an hour in Cannes in my hotel. I had some blank cards with the colored pens just in case I needed to make a second prototype or a third. And so I made a second prototype, which took me half an hour. So I gave it to the other company. And so they took those, and they were apparently about to start testing them. Anyway, that's down the line. But yeah, so that is my story of 2 different things. Very similar, just drawing things on bits of paper or cards. But I will admit that nowadays I do touch into a spreadsheet, but for me that is just to say, okay, what numbers add up to 55 or whatever number of cards I've got, and vaguely working out the distribution of attributes. Because even if it's a simple game, you need to get those probabilities right so that people aren't just turning over 20 cards and going through half the deck without a match.
There must be something about Cannes, Bez, because I've also had that experience. That's the only time I've ever pitched somebody that something I made, you know, 1 hour before the meeting, sitting on a floor in Cannes, in the convention hall, actually, on some just lined paper. And I'm sure yours looked a lot better than mine, but yeah.
I mean, both of them played the first prototype that I'd made a few weeks before. I'd actually playtested it twice, 3 times. I had playtested it 3 times before showing it to the publisher. But yeah, I guess that's a discussion we'll get to later on, like how much you need to playtest and how much do you iterate on things. But yeah, oh, I totally missed this. Lots of love to Dina, who has to head off. I love those type of games that bring fun and learning together, and used to run a Youth for Nature group. I'm already helping on another eco-conscious game. Yeah, like let's instill some good values into games. And I think that at the end of this series, I think that some of these central questions that we ask, like, why am I making this? who wants to play this, what am I making? I mean, that is the central question that we need to keep in mind. But if no one has any questions about that, Alan, are you happy to go?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I was thinking of doing a really simple game, and I thought, well, actually, let's try and do something a bit more difficult. Co-authoring may be slightly different than doing it on your own, but I'm going to go for a game which eventually ended up as Airfix Battles, which was a commissioned game for a company, and I want to take it from the ideation, if you like, up to the first version. Now, with this game was based on an idea that the company had originally. It's a kind of board war game, or it's also been described as a miniatures game with squares, but it counts as a board game to my mind. Their initial idea was to make this a kind of the initial idea was a skirmish game in Achtung Cthulhu, which is a world which combines World War II and Cthulhu mythos. Okay, so quite a big step. And the initial idea was a very sketchy one. The idea was you basically have units, which defines a kind of group of soldiers or whatever other things were being used as soldiers. So you have a unit card which defines your soldiers, and you have a bunch of those on your side, and you have another pack of cards which are called command cards, and you use these command cards to get your units to do things like moving and firing and digging in, all this kind of stuff. So that was the very, very basic idea. It's a D6 based combat system, and that was about as far as the ideation went, and there was nothing physical. And the commission was to do this as a proper World War II introductory war game. Okay, so scrap the Cthulhu stuff. We're going to do this as an introductory war game, and it's going to be based on Airfix miniatures, which I'm sure some of you from the UK at least will remember, little plastic soldiers, 1/72 scale plastic soldiers of tanks and what have you. Now, the advantage there is that for prototyping, we've already got the Airfix miniatures. Some of us have got the Airfix miniatures, so we can use them. So all we have to do is make the squared board, and this is, I think the squared board was 7 squares wide and 5 squares deep. So that's very easy. You can just draw it up on a large piece of paper or on a cloth, and then if you want terrain, you can either scribble on the papers, or you can make little counters. And I think we actually made little paper counters for things like woods and buildings and things, and used those. And the first playtest I did for this was to make a version of this in a fairly crude way and take it to the Conference of Wargamers, which is an annual event which a lot of oldie wargamers get together and play usually newly designed prototypes. This is what they actually do. So the whole purpose of that is to play prototypes. We do like it's a weekend where we start on a Friday evening and go through to the Sunday. So I take this along. It's got, all I've got here is the very basic mechanics. I've got, with my co-author, we've got some cards which we've done, and to make the cards we're actually using Card Maker, which is a free system which allows you to convert to store the stuff in, I think it is in CSVs, and then output like InDesign does. But my co-author was using Card Maker, which was in fact it was a beta version of the product, and using that to handle the text and the positioning on the cards, so that at least if we had an ability, and we had that ability used on several different cards, we could output the same words on each of the cards, and then we'd print those out, and I would cut them out, stuck them in card sleeves. So fairly crude, but at least it was typewritten prototype. It wasn't just scribbled type of prototype. It's type prototype and printed out on cards. So I took all that stuff along to the Conference of Wargamers, and typically this weekend conference, you have sessions of maybe 2 to 3 hours. So you've got quite a lengthy period of time. And I sat down with a group of guys, very, very, very experienced wargamers. So these are guys who have designed wargames themselves, some of them professional designed wargames. And we sat down and we spent an hour and a half or so attempting to play the game. And they absolutely hated it. They hated it. They said, this is absolute, complete, utter, terrible, dire rubbish. This is not something we ever want to play again, right? The mechanics, once we got into it, the mechanics kind of worked-ish, but it wasn't interesting at all. It was all the decisions that I had to make were either completely random or so obvious that they weren't interesting decisions. So I had a hell of a lot of feedback, huge amounts of feedback from that particular situation. Yeah, it was quite vitriolic. It was actually that they literally said, I will never play this again. Yeah. And so I came away from that conference having spent all that effort on making the prototype and got hold of FX Miniatures, and we'd spent a lot of time. In fact, there were 3 of us involved in the co-authoring, and I thought, well, what the hell am I going to do about this? And I had a long, hard think for maybe a week or so, and I thought, well, actually, the difficulty with this, and this is the point I want to make, really, the difficulty with this game isn't the game. It's not the game. It's the fact that we were trying to play the game without any context. Okay. Now, because what I did was, looking back on it stupidly, was I took the game along, the central game system along, and I put it down, and we did a kind of amorphous, not well described scenario with equal sides, and basically there wasn't the scenario context behind. There was a theme, World War II, but that's not enough. The players could not engage with this because there was no personalization, if you like, of what their objectives were. There was no historical injection of a particular scenario, particular detailed theme that they were trying to aim at. Their objectives were too abstract. So I actually, in the end, after about a week's thought, I thought, well, actually, there might be the germ of something really good in here. The basic mechanics are too basic to have interesting decisions. But maybe with development, more differentiation of what the units are, more detailing what the units do, and particularly addressing all of the command cards, which were just too basic to be interesting. And I thought to myself, well, maybe we could do a game here if we do a lot more development of this. So after that week of thought, my initial thought was, well, let's just draw a line under it. It's a dead game. I thought, let's just move on to something that might actually work. But then I felt maybe there's the germ of an idea, and it needs another test to work out if there is something good in this, and we have to do a lot of more work to find out if there is actually anything good in it. And the point I want to make it is, it's the players that count. Mm-hmm. You're trying out these mechanics and this physical representation. It's not the physical representation that matters. It's actually the player experience. It's what the players think, and you have to interpret what those players think. So I did a lot of work, and in fact, the two main co-authors did a huge amount of work in the year before the next playtest.
I think I'm going to stop you there, because there you're getting very much into the playtesting and iteration. And
I wanted the last point I wanted to make was, the one sentence literally, is the second major playtest that we did with the revised prototype got rave reviews from the same people who had hated it at the start in the first one. So those people who said, I'll never play this again, did play it again, and they all loved it. So when we got to the stage of playing the proper thing, they all loved it. So that's the point. That's the point that Alex has got there. It's the game. The game exists in the minds of the players, and it can be quite tricky to assess the reaction to the prototype, your initial prototype. And there is a danger that you might write something off for the wrong reasons. So I'll just warn against that, really. That was my main point.
I mean, was it that the rules of the game were functionally different, though? I mean, presumably for the second...
The rules of the game did change. They were deepened. We put much more depth into it. The decisions became much more interesting. We fleshed out...
I guess the takeaway is that you can't just test one mechanism and one tiny aspect in isolation.
Exactly.
You need to have that in the context of the bigger games. You can't just say, okay, because this auction mechanism isn't working here, we've got to scrap this auction mechanism. It's about, you need to have that in the context of which game it goes. And
yes, you need to do more playtesting, more and more playtesting with your prototypes. And you need to use judgment to come to a conclusion, I think. And I think if I'd been 20 years younger, I probably would have just said, no, it's not worth it. Let's just scrap it, not bother with it. And that was very
more patient than you used to be.
I'm a bit more patient than I used to be, I think. Yeah.
I mean, I think, thank you for sharing that story. And I think there's a lot of lessons to learn. Certainly, in a sense, even though we are going through all of these things in a step-by-step manner, you can't isolate any single part, and it all needs to be seen from a holistic point of view. And I am going to mention Alex's point, which is the only games I've pitched so far were ones I've finished a print and play version for a contest. I feel like having decent visuals gave me the opportunity to meet publishers in the first place. That's a fair point. I think that's something to be addressed when we talk about pitching. And I think that certainly, I think everyone on this screen basically has a privilege that they've worked on at least one very successful game, where if you go to a publisher, there's the kind of, okay, well, they're going to maybe be more willing to, if I go up to Cocktail Games, because they knew of Yogi, it was like, I'm just going to say, obviously, we are privileged in a way that lots of what we've done now, now we have access to things, whether it's through Yogi or Men at Work or Elysium or Airfix. With Surprise there, it's like almost like the whole publishing thing, there's 20 years of proof there, but you know what I mean, like if you go up. But regarding the playtests, the prototyping, we talked at the start about why it's good. So shall we talk now? This is your favorite part, Matt, about why you don't like prototyping. I'll let you go first. And you can talk about pitfalls. You can just talk about why prototyping is a terrible thing. So go for it.
Yeah. Well, no, I think pitfalls is a better way to put it, because I don't. There's going to be parts of all the processes that you don't enjoy as a designer, and there is some of it that is just work. Like I'm sure, as Alan was, I'm not sure saying on the stream or before the stream about Kingmaker and the sort of the vast amount of things you have to make for that. At some point there's only so much meditation you can get from assembling all these things. So yeah, but I think the pitfalls with prototyping, and it's been touched upon before. I think it's actually kind of going to the extremes in two different directions. One extreme is putting far too much work into the first prototype. We've all said that you're going to essentially bin your first prototype realistically, or at least change it a lot. So there's not a lot of point putting a lot of work into it as a physical thing. nor putting a lot of work into it, even as a design thing. Like getting a lot of illustrations and things like that. I think that's a pitfall to put the bar too high to actually get to that first play. And also that the more effort you put into, the harder it is to change it. But I'd actually say there's also a pitfall going the other way, which is, and maybe it relates a bit, to what Alan was just saying, and other parts, is that it can be difficult. Yes, that there's this kind of like fail faster mentality of like get a prototype, minimal viable prototype is thrown around a lot, and that is a very important concept. But there are still some cases that if a first prototype isn't fleshed out enough, you might never discover what was interesting there, as I was saying, with context, and there can be lots of different reasons for that. And it can be just as simple as you might not be very interested, as Rita was saying. If you get bored of a game or you don't want to work on it, then that's not going to help. And sometimes, for whatever reason, if you don't put enough effort into that first prototype, you might never kind of like make it to the second step because you haven't kind of like explored enough in that first bit of prototyping, or that prototype hasn't allowed you to kind of discover what might be in the game. So I think I think the much more common pitfall is to put too much effort into it, but also it shouldn't be forgotten that again, what's the function of that prototype is to get you to play the game and to help you on to the next step. And it can be great if you can be very quick at making a prototype that you can play, but then if it doesn't help you get to the next step because it's not really telling you anything interesting, or it's not kind of usefully interrogating that space that you're trying to explore, then that can be a bit of a pitfall, I would say.
So I think one pitfall could be working on a game too long and believing in something there is, but there might be isn't something. So as somebody just said, kill your baby, and I definitely go with that, because when I work on a prototype and I playtest it and I see it's okay, but it's not good enough, and I also do not have the intention or ideas to get it better, then I kill it. And I think we board game designers have so many good ideas so that they can switch a game or working on new games and have fun at this. So I think fun is a very important thing, because I have a lot of games I work on for more than a year, and when I see it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's okay, but it's not good enough. So I let it go. So let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Yeah.
So yeah, to keep it joyful and make sure that you maintain that in your mind.
Yes, I mean, I agree with what's been said before. I'd just like to kind of reiterate what Matt said. For your first prototype with other players, there has to be enough in there of what you mean for players to be able to engage effectively. Now, both with the concepts that you're putting into, they have to be able to engage with the mechanics and see how they relate together, and also they have to be able to engage visually. So, I mean, I used to be of the view that the graphics don't matter. I've had endless discussions with Charlie, because Charlie's an illustrator and an artist and things. She thinks, in fact, the visuals are really, really important. You got to get them right, as you'd expect. And I always used to be fairly dismissive and say, no, the graphics come later. They can just have a little word which says graphics go in here or something. And actually, I do not agree with that anymore. You have to have enough graphics that players can engage with it visually, and don't just say, and can't relate to it. And that's part of what I was talking earlier about in terms of context. So the context, enough context and detail has to be there for players to be able to engage with it effectively and comment on the game. If there isn't enough conceptually and visually there, then players can't engage. No matter how good the game is, they just can't engage. And that is a really difficult thing, because I think you can only know where that line lies if you've been doing a lot of it. And I think Tony actually is very good at this, because he pitches his playtest versions, his prototypes, really nicely, bang in the zone of where he wants it to be. Both visually and conceptually. And that's come from lots and lots of experience and lots of talent in terms of drawing. I mean, I tend to do clip art and bung clip art, relevant clip art, and use those kinds of things for visuals. But you do have to have enough visually for it to engage players. Otherwise, it will just fall flat, and you might have a really good game, but it'll fail because you haven't put enough context in there. So make more prototypes.
Yeah, for sure.
Get
If you keep on
experience of
doing
making more
anything over and
prototypes, yeah.
over and practice, you will become better.
I think we're all four of us are lucky in that we've been doing this for quite a long time, haven't we? So I think we've gained that experience of knowing how to do this. It would be interesting to ask somebody who's only done a couple of games what their experience is in terms of how they have done it originally, what they've learned from it.
Quick hello to Nicholas. It's lovely to see you. It's all good. It's like Alex said, there will be a recap soon. And hello, Rob. I'm not sure if I said hello when you first came in, but we had been talking about you just before you came in when I talked about Nandek. But yeah, I think that I don't have anything more to say. I love what Matthew said, but I am going to be doing a recap in a wee bit. So now, if we can bring this to a close, do you have any final tips, any final words that you would like to get out on the subject, Matthew?
No, I think, but just I think always see prototyping as it's a step along a process. I think. I think as long as you can kind of keep that forward momentum going, I think that will help you finish a game eventually, and just to see it as a step along the way.
So I think the most important thing, just start a game and start prototyping. So I'm in different Facebook groups, and there are often the question, hey, I'm doing my first game, and how should the prototype look? And don't be ashamed, it might be too ugly or something like that. It doesn't matter. So just start, just start, and you can do it better later, but just start.
Yeah, I agree. Do use the techniques or methods that you are comfortable with. I think that's important. I mean, we've mentioned InDesign before. That's because I think we all have InDesign. You don't have to have something sophisticated like that to do this. Do something that you are comfortable with. If cutting up the cards is fine, handwritten cards is fine. Do that method. You can always develop those methods later on, but being comfortable with your prototyping method for now allows you to get on with the actual making. Don't worry too much about sophisticated and expensive techniques.
That's some fantastic final words. I have nothing more to add. You've all been wonderful. And yep, I think that, oh wait, before I do that, there were a couple of points from chat. Firstly, Rob's ears were itching apparently, but more on topic. Alex says a game can live or die depending on the mindset you put your players into. And graphic design can really influence this, as well as utility. And I think that kind of keys into what is essential for this game. Because, yes, graphic design to a sense isn't that important. But if parts of the joy of the game is in, a silly although I was about to talk about Kitty Cataclysm, but then I remembered actually it started off as 2016.g and it was completely themeless. And then it was actually Lynn Parker, yeah, formerly Lynn Love, who actually said, hey, this could be cats because, and so, no, I think that this is so true, and you need to be mindful of, I guess this is a lesson that you're going to get when you go into playtesting. What lessons are you able to draw out of it? The more that you put into the prototype, the more lessons you'll be able to take out of the playtest, if you know what I mean. That's my personal point of view. Like, if you have a prototype that's practically a pre-production version, then you could look at so much, but maybe you've spent so much time doing these things and then it's something much more fundamental that just doesn't work. So I guess the other thing is, if you've got a single mechanism devoid of any context, you need to be aware of what a mechanism devoid of any context would play like. That maybe it isn't interesting, that maybe you're not expecting this to be a fun game that anyone would play again, but just did it work as intended? Did the economy break or something like that? You can just check, was this a fine way to gauge players' motivations? It's been lovely having you, and I am Joanne and everyone else. And now for the recap. We have talked about so much. I've got like an entire page and a half, I think. So we talked about Gaia project, and my city and other things, and walking around. We talked about renewable energy. We decided that the definition of a prototype right now is something that allows the game to be played. It is a means to an end. But then we also thought about why prototype. We decided that, and I'm going to allow people to respond to this. If you want to respond, just interrupt me on screen. That it was to facilitate the playtesting, to continue the ideation, to maybe help us as we're making that prototype to ponder things. And maybe it's to communicate ideas to the playtesters, because the way that the prototype is made, the colors that you use might give a signal to the playtesters of this is the kind of game that it is. It might be for attracting playtesters. If you are not as playing it as part of a small peer-based playtesting system, maybe you're out at a convention. Maybe you're trying to play it with strangers in a pub. I played the game that went on to be Yogi with people in the park on a sunny day. True story, Parliament Square. And there's videos of it on Board Game Geek. And, you know, at that point, it's like, okay, you can't just use scraps of paper. You need to use scraps of paper with a card behind it. So it's actually got some stiffness. I know that's, but even then, you just need enough so it's like, oh, this is a real thing. But then also for attracting publishers. And what do you need for those things? We talked about cutting corners. That's as you progress. Maybe there are many steps that it's always good to take, but as you learn more, you can just jump through them. You can have a better analysis of how can you imagine this mental model of humans playing this game, starting maybe in your head or on a computer or on paper. Everyone does it their own way. People work differently. We reiterated that it's all about answering the questions. Those questions, we could subdivide them, but it's ultimately, those questions are, what am I making and why am I making this? That's, to my mind at least, the only questions. Like, why am I making that? Kind of be like, okay, does it need to have this size of target audience? Is it for this particular publisher? Is it just for one person that I want to make it as a birthday present to say, hey, I made a game and it's very similar to another game, but no one would want to publish it, but it's got these pictures of you, and every card is like a couple of pictures of you, and that would be quite a nice birthday present, if you know what I mean. But why am I making this, and what am I making? And by the time you know what you're making, well, at that point, the game is done, once you've worked out all the details of what you're making. And Matt's talking about a lot of restrictions, making the process simpler. we talked about the fact that this initial prototype is not a pre-production copy. We had a brief tangent about, remember how you're teaching people. Some people learn better from written instructions. Some people learn better from videos. Using spreadsheets, whether that's to go on to data merge or to work out the distribution of things. Then Matt came up with some, I just think this is spot on. The two problems that you might have. Firstly, so many people keep saying it. Don't put too much work into it. Remember that you will probably bin it. And conversely, remember you need to have enough art and mechanisms, as was so clearly demonstrated in Alan's example, that you need to allow it to be played in the context so that you are able to make some meaningful, conclusions, let's say. Keeping it joyful, making it something that you can iterate on, or, you know, that you can scrap away from. You're not, oh my God, I did all this work. It's like, hey, I got to draw a bunch of things. At least, you know, maybe if the prototyping aspect itself is joyful, then it doesn't matter if you spent 10 hours on a board, as long as you're happy to spend 10 hours on another board. And remember, it is just one step. Just start. It can be ugly. You can make it better later. And Alan bringing it all together, we did have some brief stories from everyone along the way, but Alan bringing it back together to say, just do it however you are comfortable with. And everyone has to find their own way. And I guess that's the nice thing about having multiple faces on this stream. So I think hopefully that's been useful to someone. It's certainly those key questions, I'm going to definitely keep referring back to them, because for me that is a thing of, yeah, why am I making this? And even though I don't know if that's actually going to have any practical purpose, I'm sorry to now be all down on you, but it's like nice to have these things in your mind. But yep.
Alan, were you trying to say something?
Yes, I is that okay, Bez? Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I think in the answering the questions, there's a fundamental third question, which is, does it work?
Ooh.
That's absolutely, I mean, it's, yes, is does it work is, I mean, critical, really. Whatever that might mean for your objective, if discovering that the players love it, you know, and you've got this target audience, which you got, but it doesn't actually work. That's really fundamental. It has to actually, it has to work in some way.
I guess that's kind of bringing the two things together. It's like, what am I making? Why am I making it? And is it fit for purpose? Is the thing that I'm making
purpose? Is yeah, but yes. If you're testing mechanics in a prototype, I mean, I have had experience of sometimes you get a game where people seem to enjoy it a lot, but that's because they're effectively making up the things that you haven't invented. I've had that a lot, actually. Well, not a lot. I had that sometimes. They might be really enamored of the theme. They love it. They love the theme, but actually the game itself doesn't work in the way that you intended. That's a very important lesson, because you'll need to change. You'll need to change it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Matthew, Rita, do you have anything more to say before we conclude with the topic? Rita? Okay, well, I want to say thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you for the lovely comments, people watching. And most importantly, thank you to, all these amazing people. So let me talk about, if you want to find me, go to stuffwithbez.com, stuffwithbez.bigcartel.com, twitter.com/stuffwithbez, instagram.com/stuffwithbez, twitch.tv/stuffwithbez. You will find me streaming every day at 10 AM UK time, youtube.com/stuffwithbez. For the old shows, stuffwithbez.com/discord. Go to the Discord if you aren't already there. And yep, there's a game jam coming up. And so, yes, let's go in some sort of order. Matthew, you're the first one that I found. Where do you like to be found?
Sure, probably the easiest way is Twitter. I'm Wise Goldfish, one word on Twitter, but I'm also streaming on Twitch Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. MT Dunstan, and I also put things on YouTube afterwards.
And Rita.
I'm not on Twitter or Twitch, so you can reach me with Instagram. The account is called Rita on Fire, or with my name, Rita Modl. So I do post there a lot of stuff of board games, prototyping, and so on. Yeah.
And finally, Alan Paull.
Best way is the old-fashioned email, alan@alanpaul.co.uk or alan@surprisetechgames.co.uk. I'm also increasingly using Twitter now. I'm just getting back into that. So I'm Benthamfish on Twitter, and I'm also Benthamfish on various game sites as well.
So yes, again, thank you everyone. And the final question that I ask is over to you. What are you up to? You can share anything you want to. So whether you're in the comments or on screen, feel free to let us know. What are you going to try and do today? What are your hopes and ambitions? Conversely, what are you actually looking forward to getting done today? Maybe there might be a gaming opportunity, or maybe a tasty food or a nice conversation coming up. I don't know. Feel free to share anything you want, whether it's something exciting or really boring. You know, that no judgments here, no judgment zone. And anyone except, you know, in that whole thing, like the what's the paradox I'm looking for, Matthew? You know, the paradox that in order to have us, like, you know,
I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, Bess.
You don't know what I'm talking about. Have I not entered your mind sufficiently?
No,
okay,
no.
so I'm going to say, in order to have a judgment-free zone, we need to judge. Oh, it's the paradox of intolerance. Like how in order to have and so it's kind of like that, you know, in order to have a judgment-free zone, we will judge harshly to people who are judging other people harshly. But in all seriousness, you're all lovely people. So yeah, whether it's exciting, trivially important, or just fun, let us know. What are you up to? So, Alan.
Three things. I've got a Kingmaker design catch up with Gibson's games today, which is really exciting. Also, Tabletopia have solved a technical problem which has been stopping me putting the Kingmaker board on Tabletopia, which was very frustrating because fundamentally with a board game, if you can't put the board on the thing, it really doesn't work. Anyway, so that's been causing me a lot of angst, but I'm so relieved that now works. And finally, I'm paying my last income tax bill from my work today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think that's a historic thing. Closing my company and now paying the last income tax. Well, of course, I'll still pay when I'm retired, presumably.
So do it in a frame and put it on the wall.
Yeah, that's not a bad plan. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to paying tax. That's ridiculous. Anyway.
So I have two things I'm looking forward to. The first thing is we have to test with the publisher the next game I will publish. It's the following game of this is King of 12, and the following would be Council of 12. It's cooperative, and so we are in the last step. So the printing time would be April. So we have to check the rules, and so this is very exciting. And the second thing is last week I got the cross trainer for free. And yes, and I have to do work on it because it's a big one in the bedroom, and I have to use it. So I will do sports.
I've got just. I just need to plow through my emails a little bit today, but more the thing I'm looking forward to, I guess, is tomorrow. I actually, for the first time, am meeting with Hasbro to do some pitching. So that will be interesting. So we'll see how that goes.
So good luck.
Yes. Well, yeah. I don't know what to expect, but my co-designer has much more experience with it, so I'm sort of learning it.
Cool. Can I ask who the co-designer is, or?
Yeah, I'm going with Thierry Revere, so also a great YouTuber, not YouTuber. He streams and but in French. But yes.
Oh yes, who made with the beard and the glasses and.
Yeah. He's Theo Sacha, S-A-C-H-A on a lot of platforms. He designed The Loop, exactly, and he's part of Team Kaidama, which is the sort of collective with Antoine Bowser and Ludovic Montblanc and Corentin Lebrat that they did Draftosaurus, for example. Yeah. So, anyway, great guy. Lots
I wish I had more concrete things. So firstly, 8 p.m. tonight. It's a public thing. People, if you want to join me even on video, let me know. And as long as I know and trust you, everyone is invited. I decided last week we're going to alternate between more social party games and word games. So last week we were playing a Facts and a Half, which is a kind of free party game that I don't like. It's rated on. It's basically 2 truths and a lie, but you only say one thing, and people guess whether it's true or not. And you get a point for fooling half the people, and everyone who guesses correctly gets a point. Anyway, so this week we're going to be playing Make a Word Search, and we'll have a go of that. And I don't know what book we will use. Oh, I've got a dictionary. Might use a dictionary, and that might be fun, and a Japanese dictionary even. But that. I'll decide. We'll kind of have some sort of poll. Going to try and catch up with social media. I'm also going to try and draw some eyes and all my other letters that people had problems with. And I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's backed Categorical. I just sent an update. It was like emotionally difficult to kind of explain everything, but yeah, just got 2 comments on it, both saying, hey, thank you so much for being so upfront, and of course put yourself first, and we totally understand. We'll get to it when we get it. So in a sense, I'm just so grateful to have these amazing Kickstarter backers, as opposed to, you know, when you've got a Kickstarter project that goes into many thousands of backers, whilst it might be economically a lot nicer, it also comes with its own set of problems. I'm not going to deny that. But yeah, I'm going to draw some letters. I might send off something also to Dina. But Rob has a proofreading job for this evening, and Jones is putting together a training resource thing to help people with rulebook writing. So look out for that from Cards or Die. And yep, hopefully it will be useful for lots of people. Alex is playing with children, then lots of tidying. And so, yep. So that is the end of the stream. I'm going to very quickly check out what's going on. Okay. We have, Erin Shea live is an amazing musician. Theodore, I've not seen much of them before. They've got fewer people. So what do you say, Matt? Music or a crafter?
I don't mind at all.
I know. Okay.
Let's do music. Cool.
Okay, do it. Okay, Theodore Elf Ving. That's how it's written. So, yes, we're going to check out. Wait, is Michael on?
Yeah, Michael is on. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I had to press the show more button. It didn't show me the bottom of the thing. Yeah, we'll go. We'll read Idle Michael. So let us, for the next streams, look at softbabes.com/streams. All of these people, thank you all for agreeing to join me in about 2 weeks. And we're going to be doing some prototyping and initial design and trying to work on some things during the game jam week. And I'm going to be reaching out to some people. Hopefully they will agree to, I'm just going to ask someone for certain words as inspiration so they can be optional restrictions. We'll see how that goes. But if that fails, then I'll ask my sibling to, hey, give me some words or flick through a dictionary or something, and that will be what we pick. But it should be fun anyway. Share, spread the word. If you want to join the raid, then feel free to copy paste parts of that or not as you want. After all, Michael knows who we are. But there is only one thing left to do. And any final words from anyone?
Thanks very much.
Okay, well.
Thanks. Yep.
Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.